Gundam.tk presents Gundam Astray, Red Frame. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back. It's Robert184 and I'm continuing with part 2 of my look at the Gundam Astray Red Frame Master Grade, where you can see all the parts and see how well they're put together. And don't forget to check out part 1 for all the details about the manga and the box, etc. So first of all, I thought I'd build the Gundam first. Usually I do weapons first, but in this case I wanted to do the red frame right away. And when you're done, yeah, that's it. That's all the plates I've used, not very much. And I still have this much left, and some of those are only half filled, to complete the tactical arms. So a lot of work still to go. Also, something I should note is how many tools I used for this. I decided that because it was in red, I was going to use Real Touch markers, and I could have gone with my brown lining marker. But I think the Real Touch marker worked, as you'll see how to put it on in a second. And I also used a lot of black and gray. Instead of using the lining markers, again I went with the ink, which has its good points and its bad points, as you'll see when we get a close-up of the parts. On this kit, I'll show you how I use Real Touch markers, which it's not something that I usually use on white Gundams, but on this, if you see, I'm just going to take this and splotch it all over the place where we have a line, which is no problem at all. And then you can just take a Q-tip and rub all of the excess stuff off, and you're going to be left with something that has a lot more definition, and you don't have to use the black lining on the red, and I think this looks a little bit better. So far, when it's all put together, you're going to get the two legs with the feet attached. They also have separate ankles. You get the waist unit, you get the chest unit, which has this backpack flap sort of thing attached onto it. Two arms, of course, two separate shoulders, the head unit, and I've built one of the swords, in this case, the Gabura Straight. Taking a look at the parts individually from bottom to top, you've got the legs, and I'll show you in a second how the inner frame looks, but you can see here with the bend that everything wants to move here really well, and then you have gaps open up on the inside. The fact that they have this many moving parts and that it moves this smoothly while maintaining this solid white facade on the front is very impressive. And I thought that he might have skinny legs down here at the bottom, but they actually don't look all that bad. Now, one thing I am concerned about after Master Grade Exia, I thought the double ankle point was great until I started actually putting it together, and my Master Grade Exia falls down all the time. So here you've got a separate ankle part that's attached here, and these white parts are also able to move individually. So you have a lot of mobility, and it actually covers up everything, no matter how you want to move it. As far as the foot goes, you've basically just got to bend up here, and otherwise it's just a solid back heel. So this is actually live during the build, and I'm just putting together the leg here, and before I cover up this main inner frame with the white parts that go all around it, I just wanted to show you how impressive this inner frame is. So first it bends here, and then you can see this whole part here wants to come down, and it brings it with it, and there's a piston type part there on the front that bends down. So this knee joint has an incredible amount of articulation. The waist unit is relatively small and unremarkable. You've basically just got two pieces here on the front, and you just plug in a cap, and I put some lining there. Put some red pieces on the front here, again some lining there, tiny little pods on the sides. These parts here basically just go in halfway, and they're very solid feeling so far. So I don't think we're going to have any problems with the legs staying in place. As for the back skirt, it's just a few pieces put together, a big red one in the back, white part on top, and then one more part down below. Here's a look around the chest unit, which just has this big flap on the back, which I'm sure is going to be used later. And you have a fair bit of mobility here. It moves front to back and side to side. And it's sort of cool that they have this part built here. This is on a pivot, this is on a pivot, and this slides. So that even when you're bending the lower waist, you have no problems keeping this back part attached to the bottom. Now, if you open this up down here, you're also able to open up the cockpit, and it's not all that difficult to bring it forward, and inside you've got crazy haired Lo sitting there looking all relaxed. I wonder where Kisato is. Well, anyway, looking around the rest of the chest, you've just got shoulders here that have a bit of mobility up and down, and a tiny bit forward and back. Well, a little bit more at the back, but it doesn't seem to swing that far forward. And the neck, it looks to me like this neck cavity is very empty, but it sort of keeps up with the muscular feel of the red frame with the way they did the shoulders and the neck here in general. The arms are also a lot more red than I expected. I expected there to be more white unless you actually look at the colored line art a lot more carefully. But look at how smooth this bend is. Zero effort required whatsoever, and it just wants to bend, and everything wants to stay in place. So you can see the way that the elbow armor just locks down there, no problem at all. and it's just an incredibly smooth feeling here. So you just slap on this white part before putting in the shoulder joint, which of course spins around, and it's fairly solid again, though not as solid as the legs. Inside here I put in a fair bit of red lining again with the inking, and sometimes that will come onto the white part, so you have to be careful with that, and I'm going to have to go clean that up with a little bit of paint thinner later. As for the hands, they have the bend here, and again I just put in some real touch marking there, not lining, and the biggest disappointment. Yes, this is a 5,000 yen master grade, and yet we get single colored hands, which is actually not something that I'd be too upset about, except for the fact that my high grade 144th Victory Gundam has the ability to double inject 2 colors into a single part. So Bandai, you could have not skimped out and given us white fingers. Now, they're not going to be as impressive as the perfect grade, I completely understand, but the fact that I have to spend 2,400 yen if I want to order special manipulator sets that have painted white fingers seems something that I shouldn't have to do with a master grade. Here's the shoulder, and it's fairly simply constructed. You're just going to put on a front, a back, and you're going to put on this little mount mechanism, which just has a tiny bit of movement here, and then you're going to slap a grill on here. So I put some red lining underneath that you don't really notice too much, and though you do have a gap, I thought about lining that, but I chose not to. Just a tiny bit there and a tiny bit on the top, but overall it looks very clean, and then I'm going to put the dry decals on here later. Now here's a far away look at the Gabura Straight, and I think it actually looks pretty good from a distance. And the gold, as much as I complained before, doesn't look as toyish as I thought, but again, it really should be plated, especially when you draw the sword and you see how shiny and awesome that is, and you see how dull and lackluster this is. Now for some close-ups here, you can see on here that they have a fair bit of detail, just slap some lining in there. And then again around the gold, not as good as the perfect grade of course, but still a fair bit of detail that if you wanted to do some dry brushing or something, would probably look pretty cool. I do like the fact that they do have a slit here so that when you have the sword inside, you're able to see it and you can see it go in and out. Again, just put some red real touch marking on here. I think this gives you an idea too of the real touch lining as compared to the regular lining markers, because it comes across as being very, very thin, which I don't know why, but it seems that because the red frame is primarily red, I went with gray instead of black on the body, and I think that the thin look does look pretty good, but you can see in some places that it's inconsistent, so I'm going to have to take a toothpick and some Q-tips and go clean that up later. What else can I say? But the real winner here so far is the head of the Master Grade red frame, which I'm really impressed with. Now I know that anybody who's built the blue frame has already been blown away by this, but for me this is my first time, and I am very, very impressed with it. So first of all, you just put in 2 big red parts in the middle, then you put in the red face, and the eyes are clear green inside. So if you want to paint some black around the clear green, you can end up having clear eyes, which is pretty cool. I went with black lining in the front, not real touch there. And it's sort of cool that the eyebrows and the nose and the front part here are one solid piece. I sort of expected them to build the eyebrows into the top, but it's actually built into the front. And I think it's very unique amongst a Gundam to have that color bar between the eyes. As for the rest, you basically have a black part sitting on the top, followed up by a clear green part that goes from front to back, and then you put a white part on top of that and then just seal this off. And something that I should talk about is when they made this kit, they are starting to do it with the new style, where when they put on the attachments to the plates, they tend to be offset a little bit. So when you cut them, you actually have another little nub to cut off, but what that does is it stops you from having a gouge mark where you cut it off on the piece itself. And it really comes across well here on the V antenna, which is somewhere where it's usually very easy to see the cut marks. From here, from the stickers, you can see that there's this black triangular one and one of the camera lenses, which you can choose to put under this green part and on top of this green part. But I decided that I just like the look of the clear part, so I'm not going to put that in, although that's something I can always fix up later. So just to wrap up, a few general words about the build itself. Everything about this, putting these parts together, was impressive for me. From the way they had all the bending mechanisms, and even in the hands, they have things like these little 3 offset panels, and the way this is it's actually a built-in U, and then you slide a part into the middle. From the little details like that, this was just a pleasure to build, and I think that anybody who's built the blue frame, well, you're 3-4 months ahead of me on this, and I'm sure that you had a good time with it as well. Thanks for watching part 2, everybody, and stay tuned for part 3, where I'll be putting it together and we can actually see how the Master Grade Red Frame looks all put together. This is Robert184 from Gundam.tk, and thanks to everybody who rates, comments, and subscribes. Stay tuned for this, and then the tactical arms will be coming up later. See you later, everybody.